really do your homework on the areas that you are an expert in or that you want to focus in to understand how you can best service them. I don't think the project launches are going to slow down anytime soon. I think we're going to continue to see the developers launch new projects into the market. It's essential that real estate agents use the data in order to advise their clients appropriately. There's never a best time than now to invest.
Lynnette, you've had over 20 years in real estate, Prop Tech Woman Leader of the Year, a graduate from Harvard, MENA's top 10 real estate consultant, and more famously known as Dubai's real estate data queen. I'm very, very excited to have you on the podcast today. Literally, like, since landing, so many people were like, you must meet Lynnette, you must meet Lynnette. Like, honestly, you've got such an incredible reputation. Not only do you know the industry inside and out, but you've actually helped shape it as well. So I'm very grateful for your time and for jumping on with me. So welcome.
Thank you. That's a very kind intro, Katie. Thank you for having me.
No, thank you. I mean, for those that have not met you yet, I think it's worthwhile just starting from how you got into property, how you came who you are today, and how you made all that happen, because it's a very, very exciting resume.
So my two passions is real estate and technology. And I got into both of them at a very, very young age, around 7 years old.
Wow.
Yes. So when I was 7, I started my first programming class. It was a basic programming class in school. And that's where I fell in love with technology. Amazing. And then on the real estate side, my mother had an apartment building in the south side of Chicago. And because her English was not very good, she's from Puerto Rico, I basically managed that building, brought in tenants, collected the rents, dealt with maintenance issues. And that was like my little Monopoly game, I always call it. And that's where I fell in love with real estate. So it started at a very, very early age.
So early.
So fast forward, I moved to Dubai in 2006 with both of those passions in hand. Prior to Dubai, I had a real estate brokerage in Las Vegas, Nevada for about 5-6 years before moving to Dubai. However, when I came to Dubai, I never brokered. So I decided to focus on the prop tech or real estate technology, because that word prop tech did not exist when I arrived into Dubai in 2006. And I saw a huge gap in the market when it came to real estate data and just being able to assess or even have access to what recently sold, what recently rented, comparable data.
Yeah.
Because I was looking to rent an apartment and I just landed here. I wanted to understand what the apartments were going for, and there was zero data. So that's the start of my journey, where I started to focus on bringing the real estate data and making it open here in the Dubai real estate market. I started Property Monitor, which is currently a B2B real estate database for mostly real estate professionals. And then from there, I moved to Property Finder and created Data Finder. And while at Property Finder, we did a collaboration with Dubai Land Department to create Muasher, which is the first official house price index for the city of Dubai. During that time, I was on the advisory council for the Open Data API. To release it into the market. And that's where I finally was able to bring the real estate market data to the market.
That's honestly insane. Like, you're like, I did this, and like, they are huge accomplishments in terms of like making that happen. I'm sure you had challenges along the way as well.
Absolutely.
Kind of coming from a different property environment completely and coming here in quite the early days, what were the main challenges that you faced?
So I would say I came from the US. Like I said, I had a brokerage in the States. I had an MLS system. At that point, Zillow and Trulia, they had how much is your home worth, and you were able to see in real time who owned what property, what is sold for, et cetera, et cetera. When I came here, like I said, there was nothing. And I knew the source of truth was Dubai Land Department, the government. So I immediately, that was the first place that I went to. However, at that point, confidentiality and not releasing the data, because it was not released at that point, was very important to the government. They didn't understand why this information needed to be out there. So while I was at Cavendish Maxwell, which is the consultancy that owns Property Monitor, I convinced the government to let us do a real estate report for them. And it was called Daraya, the report. And this was in 2016. And it was the first time that Dubai Land Department gave the real estate or the residential data to a consultancy for us to do the analysis and put out a yearly report. And that's exactly what they did. impacted. And when they saw that and they saw the impact in the market, in the newspapers, in the press, on the radio, on TV, then we started to continue to do these reports. And then eventually, this is when we started to build Property Monitor. Actually, it was in parallel during that time. And we were showing them the value of having that data on a B2B platform that is accessible to real estate professionals for them to be able to do their job appropriately with, data backed, not opinion, but it's data backed. Then when I moved to Property Finder, obviously I had a plethora of listing data. So I started to put out reports on the listing data and what's happening in Dubai. And at that point, this is when the government really wanted to open the transparency because of the JLO Global Real Estate Index, which is a bi-yearly report and something that all major cities across the world want to increase their transparency, increase their level on this report. Dubai being one of them at that point. So this is where the conversation started for MWasher, for the real estate index. So it took many years. I started when I landed 2006, I started about 2009 working with them. Then finally, 2016 was Property Monitor. Property Finder was 2018 when we signed the MOU with Dubai Land Department. So it took almost 10 years to get them on board, convince, and show the value. Obviously, the real estate data is very important here to the market. It's extremely important to foreign direct investment, to investors coming into the market. So they wanted it handled with care, which is why they're very selective on who has access to the Open Data API. There's only 3 entities today. It's Property Finder, Bayut, and DXP Interact that have official access to this Open Data API. So, and I completely understand that. This market is not the US market or like the UK market. It's a very different market. And still to this day, there is still confidentiality on names. It's not published, which it should not be in this region. Nationality, again, that's not published here. So, however, the rest of the data is open, which is very good and very helpful, and it has made a significant impact in the real estate market here.
Insane, because honestly, like before this, people must have been just buying blind, because how do you know what something's worth, what the value of a property is? Like, I feel like without this information, sellers could just make up the price as they went along without the actual facts and figures of what something should look like or rent for, or the previous prices. And I suppose it was helpful for the government as well, because actually you can then track the property prices and how it has increased. And I'm very much like a numbers-based decision maker. Like, I like to see the numbers. I'm an investor. It's very like numbers driven, which is why I love all the stuff you do, because although we can't like predict the future, no one has a crystal ball, but you can track the changes that have happened. And that's why you need the real data in order to do so.
Yeah, and that was the whole purpose of MWasher, the real estate index for Dubai. And it was extremely successful. And the model that we built it on was a model that's used all over the world, which is called a hedonic regression model. This is in data science world. And we were able to take the off-plan and the secondary market and create a proper index with both different dynamics using one of the methodologies called the Fisher method. And, it took almost a year to create the index, but between the Property Finder team and the Dubai Land Department team, we really came up with a very good index, which is still live and active today. And this index is used by the IMF. It's used by the UAE Central Bank. So it is a credible, obviously, index. So before, investors were relying on the experience of real estate agents. Now real estate agents have these platforms like Property Monitor, Data Finder, DXP Interact, where they can look at the data. However, another challenge that I had is when we first came out with Property Monitor and then afterwards Data Finder or Property Finder, it took a lot of convincing on our side to show the value to agents on why they should be using this, because obviously it's another step for them. You have to create a comparative market analysis report. We made it very easy for them. However, for them to be able to digest the data, so unless you're an agent like yourself that is very data centric, it was an area that was uncomfortable for a lot of agents. So it took many, many years for them to adopt and embrace the data. And it was actually COVID where they really went into the systems, used it, was using the reports, because it was a very tough time with COVID for real estate agents here. And during COVID, I was at Property Finder, and we were doing weekly webinars, and we were showing, and on these webinars, we had thousands of people join. It was incredible. And we were showing them the value of the data and be able to predict where the market was going. We saw a huge increase in searches on the Property Finder platform on listings for villa townhouses. This is when that trend, changed significantly.
Of people
here.
wanting space.
Exactly. So we were telling the agents, majority of the ones who were on the webinars, and investors, we had everybody on the webinars, saying, look, guys, focus on the villa townhouse areas, focus on those projects that, are being sold off plan. And, the agents, they really embraced it and they realized the value, but it took almost a decade.
I suppose it's kind of the same with any type of change. Of maybe previously they could dictate what they were sharing with clients and their personal opinion.
Exactly.
Whereas now you can take a data-based approach, which does stand you apart. You're actually adding a lot of value to your clients by being able to demonstrate the value, the information, the returns, which is what investors want. So instead of them just kind of making it up as they go along, it was kind of this transition. But yeah, I think you can't escape the data now because everyone has access to it.
And everyone's using it.
Yeah.
Which is beautiful. It's music to my ears to see it.
To see this thing actually be used and be so helpful and add a lot of value to everything.
Yes.
Oh my God, insane. So the Dubai market itself, you have obviously kind of watched it grow. You've been very heavily involved in the data to see the market trends. How has it changed over your time here?
Oh, wow. Okay. I've seen many different shifts, pivots. This market is really based on sentiment. So for example, I remember when Expo was announced, prices doubled, tripled overnight, just based on an event that was going to happen 4 or 5 years from now or from then. So I've seen pretty much everything. I arrived in 2006, so I saw the financial crisis. I saw the impact here in Dubai, both from an economic perspective as well as from a real estate perspective. I saw the growth.
To put some kind of picture around that particular time, how was it in terms of property prices? Although I think it was an issue that the whole world was facing at that time, was it particularly worse in this area in terms of the context of...
I wouldn't say it was worse in this area because it was pretty bad all over the world. I would say that the property market took a very big hit because the prices before the financial crisis was very inflated because there was high demand and little supply. So people were paying more than what they should have paid for those properties. And even today, those properties are still not worth what they paid for back then.
Okay.
So they haven't reached to that value. So, a lot of people lost a lot of money, but it wasn't unique to Dubai. It was all over the world. And of course, we saw a stop just in real estate transactions as a whole. Off-plan was affected, and then this is where a lot of the new regulations came out at that time, for example, for escrow accounts for developers, which was one of the best things that has happened here in Dubai for off-plan projects. So there was a lot of changes that happened during that time, but it really eventually improved on the regulation side, the Dubai real estate market.
Yeah, and I think those changes were probably massively needed. From what I've learned so far is that it was growing so quick and they didn't necessarily have the regulation. So they had to then put it in retrospectively once they realized the mistakes that were happening. And then they were like, oh, we need to change and we need to shift this to make sure that we are a great place, because they want to attract that investment and to make it a lot more secure. And I think there's a lot of people that have heard the horror stories that happened maybe in that time, but it's the fact that they've actually kind of changed course to make sure that it is a great place to invest.
Yeah, I mean, look, Dubai is 53 years old?
Yeah, that's crazy, isn't it?
A lot has happened in that 53 years. I go back to the States. I was there a few weeks ago for a few weeks, and I'm just looking around, especially the new construction. I was in Miami, in South Beach. The new construction, I'm thinking oh my God, I feel like I'm 20 years back compared to what I'm seeing in Dubai.
Mm-hmm.
So Dubai is extremely dynamic,
Yeah.
especially in the real estate market. And a lot has changed and improved. And, you know, we're constantly learning and making it better, especially for foreign investors, so that they feel safe and secure. The laws and regulations are constantly evolving. Dubai Land Department RERA has an amazing job from all avenues. So I think, you know, Dubai is that true dream story, as they say.
But while we have you, I do want to talk data and talk numbers. I was going through your Q3 report. One of the points there were off-plan dominance continues. What impact do you think that will have on buyers and investors in the industry?
In the beginning of the year, I predicted 2024 would be the year of off-plan. And boy, has that come to light.
Joking, yeah.
As you said, we've seen a record amount of new launches as well as units that are under construction and expected to be completed. In the next 18 to 24 months, I believe we're going to see a significant shift in the market, price adjustments in certain areas, market absorption. This is what we need to look for in the next 18 to 24 months. So as you said, 50,000 units were launched just in Q3 alone.
Yeah.
In 2024, we've had 129,000 units launched. So new units marketed into the market.
Yeah.
Today, we have 296,000 units under construction.
Insane.
Okay. Total units completed in Dubai is 556,000. So just put that into perspective.
Context, yeah.
We have about 41,000 in addition in planning phase.
Yeah.
Now in 2024, we were supposed to have about 40,000 units completed. 22,000 have completed. So we have another 20,000 which are expected to be completed by end of year. A lot's going to move over into next year.
Next year, yeah.
H1 of next year. Next year, we have 75,000 units expected to be completed. And in 2026, 114,000 units. Now, if you look at population growth since COVID, we've had steady gross growth of 100,000 new residents. Now, this is gross. We don't know the net number.
Yeah.
So how many people leave? So today, the current population here in Dubai stands at 3.77 million. That's the most recent number from Dubai Statistics Center. We can only look at the data.
Yeah.
Yes, we have Vision 2024, where they're expecting for the population to grow to 5.4 million people. That's the latest official number. I saw in a report 8.9, but I have no idea where that number came from. So the official number is still 5.4 million.
Yeah, I've seen that one.
We need to look at price adjustments, how certain areas, especially where you have a lot of like high density areas, let's say, for example, JVC. And I always use JVC as an example, but it's a really good example. We have 36,000 units existing, 30,000 to be completed in the next few years.
They're going to like literally double the amount of stock there.
Exactly.
Which then begs the question of like supply and demand. That's like how the whole property industries run, no matter where you are. Are we going to kind of have too much supply for the demand?
So again, it depends on that population growth. But if we look at the 100,000 consistently that we've had since 2021, and if you look, for example, at JVC, since we're using that as an example, we also need to think about the infrastructure.
Yeah.
How much more infrastructure growth can there be within JVC and exits and entry points? There's two. Can any more be created to support this additional 30,000 that are coming into units coming into that market, and some of which are commercial? There's, I believe, 2 commercial buildings that are in that mix. Not in the 30,000 mix because these numbers are strictly residential, but additional 2 commercial buildings coming into the mix. JVC is a very popular area for high ROI.
Yeah.
I would definitely challenge market or capital appreciation in the next upcoming years. And of course, price adjustments for both sales and rentals. Rentals, good thing for a lot of people here, a lot of residents here, because the rents have risen significantly quarter on quarter, year on year since COVID, and it will continue until this new supply starts to get released into the market. So the next 18 to 24 months. So I do not see a relief in rental prices for at least another 2 years from now.
Yeah.
However, when that relief comes, we're really going to start to see it balance out. Now, again, it's going to depend on the amount of population that comes into Dubai. But if we're looking at the historical data, 100,000 yearly since 2021, That's the numbers that I will be going off of. And then you look at the areas that are growing. And for example, Dubai South.
Yeah.
So the airport in 10 years. So that's a long-term approach. That's thinking capital appreciation long-term, ROI long-term, definitely not something for the near future. And of course, Business Bay, the area that we're in, is growing significantly.
Yeah.
But you really need to, as an investor and as an agent advising investors, really do your homework on the areas that you are an expert in or that you want to focus in to understand how you can best service them, not just now when they're buying, but especially off plan down the line when it gets released, and how their money is going to be working for them in the future.
And on that kind of like people coming in, because that's really going to dictate the supply and demand and if we've got enough and property prices, any corrections, you've also got like the Airbnb angle of that as well, because I read somewhere that there was 18 million visitors last year, but 70% of those are staying in Airbnbs. So again, that kind of skews the numbers that we're looking at, because if a lot of these units are going to be actually used for holiday rentals, then does that alter the supply and demand again, because it's going to mean a lot of these people are guests staying short term, and investors are going down that strategy as well.
And this is where you need to look at market saturation as well.
Yeah.
And on the Airbnb side, if you look at the licensing compared to a few years ago, it was about 9,000 units that were licensed. Today, we're close to almost 30,000. And that number is just going to increase, year on year. However, for example, if you look at the areas where you have a lot of off-plan and where you have a lot of high demand for Airbnb, let's say the area around downtown Dubai, there's a lot of new projects which are being launched. For example, you have Shoba District 1, Shoba District 2, Al Kahil Road. How many units are going to be coming up in those areas that will be competing with the downtown Dubai units that will have an impact on the pricing, on the Airbnb pricing? That whole market is very new. And I actually went to a conference about a month ago, and it was probably one of the best real estate conferences I've been to in a very, very long time, because they are new. They know they have to be extremely agile and dynamic in this very dynamic market. And the way that they were calculating rents and cost and ROI, it was incredible on how quick they were able to change with the market. So when it comes to that market, I have a lot of confidence just by those leaders and those players in that conference, which are leading the short-term market here today. Again, there's going to be shifts. There's going to be change in pricing, which is good for the tourists because they'll be paying less than what they, for example, currently are paying today once the new supply gets handed over. However, areas like Dubai Marina, where you don't have much supply coming in, we have like 2 or 3 projects and that's it. And I think we're done. More or less in that area.
Left there.
That area will still have very high rates, and you're competing with the hotels, and the hotels are competing with the Airbnb. So that whole market is very interesting, and if you do it properly, you can get 12 to 15% returns on your Airbnb.
Yeah, no, it's a powerful tool to kind of help just get that extra income from the investments that you make. But I think you're right, like the location, it's not just like a cert, it's going to work wherever you pick. You've got to be really strategic about where you're investing and locations, and even to the point of like which development you're in. It's not just like, because developers here hold a lot of status and all the things that amenities and everything that comes with it. It's kind of making sure that you are being advised in the right way.
Exactly. Because especially in those areas where we're going to have a lot of high supply coming into the market, the tourists are going to be looking for those amenities.
Yeah, exactly.
And for those buildings that stand out and have the high reviews.
And that's something very different from the UK, because no one really knows who developed what. It's a building, the amenities are very similar in each one, whereas here I've noticed it's a massive selling point and is important.
So if you look at the last few years, 2021 to 2022, it was definitely a seller's market, and the secondary market did very, very well. However, as we start seeing the shift and the demand go to off-plan, 71% of the transactions in Q3 were for off-plan. So as you see that shift, and also in the Q1 this year, we started to see a shift from a seller's market to a buyer's market in the secondary market. And the sellers were not budging on pricing. Now they've had to budge, and now they are dropping their prices, even though only 6% of the listings in Q3 had a price drop, meaning residents who want to invest and live in the property are buying in the secondary market. They're not buying in the off-plan. So 69% of the purchases that were in the secondary market were mortgaged in Q3.
Which is higher than previous.
Absolutely. In Q2 it was 50%, which was also very high.
Yeah.
Typically, the Dubai market saw anywhere between 2 to 12% mortgages traditionally for years until a few years ago. We've had low interest rates over the last few years at like 4.25%, 4.5%. Interesting also to note though, in Q3, even though the interest rates were dropped by 25 base points by the US Federal Bank, which also directly impacts us because dirham is pegged to the dollar.
Yeah.
So whatever happens in the US, the next day, typically, most of the time, always, it absolutely happens here.
Yeah.
But for some reason in Q3, some banks decided to raise their interest rates, which I found very interesting. And I think that's something that we need to keep an eye on, because so not only did they raise their interest rates, they also changed some of the banks, the LTVs for non-residents to 65%, which means that they can borrow less than previously.
And do you have any insights of why they did that?
I think they're projecting the market.
Okay.
I personally believe that they're looking at liquidity. They're looking at the new supply coming into the market.
Yeah.
And they're assessing risk.
I think also after they've gone through like 2008, they're probably wanting to protect themselves. If they can see all this supply coming in, they're trying to create an economy where that doesn't happen again.
Of course. That's where the minimizing the risk comes into play based on their portfolios and the percentage that they have on off-plan, which is a very small percentage, by the way, of mortgage. It's less than 10%, more or less 5% of the market. And then just assessing what they currently have in the residential market on their books. But I think that they're looking at the future and seeing this new supply that's coming in the market and how it's going to impact pricing, both on the rental and the sales price. And they're just being cautious.
And then it's interesting then of like why more people are looking to mortgage the property. Do you think that's a different dynamic of people coming into the market? Do you think there's any
affordability? Because prices are very high still in the secondary market, and just coming down with that down payment is a lot of money still for most individuals. And the interest rates are low. I mean, they're 4.25%, 4.5% still.
So why not leverage?
Why not? Exactly.
So in terms of investors coming into this market and they're seeing all this information, how would you advise them best in terms of like how to make sure they are investing in the right areas, and what would you suggest for them?
This is where the real estate agents need to look at the data.
Yeah.
They need to look at the data, look at what's currently existing, look at the current pricing, look at what's coming up, being released like for like, completed like for like in those areas. So like, for example, JVC, if you're a JVC specialist, you really need to be looking at that data, looking at the areas where you see the opportunities. And it's not just Dubai, it's also Iraq and Abu Dhabi. So those markets have also done very well in the last few years.
Yeah, I think it's getting a lot more publicity, a lot more attention. And I think people are seeing the opportunity where they may have missed out in Dubai Marina, for example, or the Palm, like you mentioned. And now we've got these kind of new places, which some people would be too nervous to invest there because they can't see the future. And then others are finding like a great opportunity.
Absolutely. I mean, RAC is a very good example of that. So if you look at Al Marjan Island 3 years ago, during COVID, no one would think to spend over 2,000 dirhams per square foot there.
Yeah.
Then obviously when Win was announced, people were still skeptical. And then when it started construction, that's when it, all the developers and they started buying the plots. And now Al Marjan is completely sold out, and all the developments are sold out, and it's, it's over 2,000 dirhams per square foot. I remember when I purchased my first few investment units there, before the hype, I paid 350 dirhams per square foot. But everyone thought I was crazy.
Yeah.
But it was at the thick of COVID. I'm like, I know what's happening there. I don't care. I'm going to buy there.
You were in early.
And I wish I would have bought more, but it is what it is. But another example is Sinya Island, Al Sinya Island in Al Quain, which is a project by Shoba. I was there this weekend, and it reminded me of when I was here in 2005, going in the 4x4s with Nakhil in the Palm.
Yeah.
It was just sand and water, and we're going into the ocean. That's what I remember, going to the sales office. Now, I went to Sinya Island. There's no sales office. Yes, actually, there's nothing there yet. They're just barely starting construction. The bridge is being completed. So you took like the side road. But, you know, we were in the 4x4 and we're just looking around and it's just pockets of water, sand, a beautiful natural island. And what I envisioned in 2005 of what the Palm is today, or what it could be in my mind at that point, is exactly how I was looking at El Sinai Island this weekend. And I know that's going to be an amazing project.
It's a beautiful, beautiful place. The water, the casino, it's got a lot going on for it.
Yeah, so Sinai Island is a 4-minute boat ride to Al Marjan Island, to the Wynn Casino, or a 12-minute car ride to Al Marjan Island. It is a private natural island, so it's going to be secluded. It's going to be 5-star. You're going to have your 5-star resorts there, like Ritz-Carlton, Four Seasons. That the names haven't been announced yet. And then you're going to have a marina. It's going to be a beautiful project. But you see it today and you just see sand and a little bit of water, pockets of water here and there. But if you can vision it, and if you, as a real estate agent, can explain the story of the Palm and explain what is happening in RAC and Quain being right next door to RAC, then this is where you can help your investors to understand, I'm talking about international investors, understand the growth and what has happened and the future of the UAE. The RAC that we see today, we're not going to recognize in 5 years from now. So the Wynn Casino is going to open in 2027. I lived in Las Vegas for almost 10 years before moving here. I saw the amount of money the casinos pumped into the city of Las Vegas, the municipality. Same thing will happen in Ras Al Khaimah. And it's going to be a whole nother world. So we have options.
Yeah. I'm like so excited to see the growth of that because I was there and it's sand, it's construction, it's cranes, there's like nothing to see yet. And in 3-5 years time when we go, and it'll be like a completely different community. And I think that's what a lot of investors can often struggle with, is picturing it and envisaging of what it could be and what it will be, and having the trust and faith in all the developers to make that happen, essentially.
That's where the data comes in.
Yeah.
And also the data on the developers and their track record.
Yeah.
That's very important when you're picking a project here. And also the location of the project, the amenities of the building. All of that needs to be taken into consideration. And these data platforms that are available have all that information there.
Yeah.
So it's essential that real estate agents use the data in order to advise their clients appropriately.
So we are heading into 2025. What kind of predictions would you see that are going to come in the next 12 months?
So like I said, the next 18 to 24 months are going to be crucial.
Yeah.
It's going to depend on the amount of supply that gets released in 2025. As I said, half of what was supposed to get completed was completed in 2024, which now the other half is going to get moved into 25. I don't think the project launches are going to slow down anytime soon. I think we're going to continue to see the developers launch new projects into the market. I think especially in H1 of next year, we're going to see a lot of new projects come into the market just from what I'm hearing from the various different developers. I think there's going to be some really interesting projects coming into the market. That's going to surprise a few people, actually a lot of people. And the growth, again, you need to look at the macroeconomic and geopolitical issues. Those cannot be ignored. So with Trump's election, the dollar is strong.
Yeah.
The euro's weak. The euro today, or on Friday, was 3.88. So you're going to see a lot of more U.S. investors come into the market. They have been coming into the market over the last few years. You're going to see different dynamics within the region have somewhat of an effect on investors' mindsets. So those need to, you can never forget those two. However, I still see the Dubai real estate market being resilient and growing in 2025.
So if you were a first-time investor looking to invest in the Dubai property market, what would your approach be?
Look at the data. I would do my homework as an investor. Look at the data, try to find as much open data possible. So I would look at like the Property Finder, the Bayouts, look at their open data and do my homework on the areas, depending on the type of investor. Am I looking for, just pure ROI? Am I also looking for capital appreciation? Is this a place that I will be using part-time? Is this a place that I will eventually retire to? All of these factors need to be taken into consideration when you're looking for, am I looking to just buy off plan and then flip before it gets released. So all of these factors need to come into hand. However, always look at the data first.
And do you think now, because the most Googled question about Dubai property is the property market going to crash? I think everyone is kind of wondering, and is this a good time to invest? What would your advice be on it?
So I always say there's never a best time than now to invest. No one has that crystal ball. Yes, you can see certain projections, you can look at the data, but you don't. COVID, another version of COVID can come in the next few months. So there are certain things that you cannot predict. Again, you need to be smart, and you need to look at the areas that are overly saturated with projects. Because let's say you invest and you're looking for the long term, and you're there when the property gets released, 6 months to a year for an area to get populated here in Dubai. So you're going to be competing with hundreds of other units just like yours on the rental market, for example, or on the sales market. So, these are all the things that you need to take into consideration as a first-time investor. I would be more conservative as a first-time investor, and for sure find a real estate professional who understands the market, especially the areas that I'm interested in, and who can guide and advise me properly. But I definitely would be more on the conservative side.
And I always think with that question, it's almost like it must be people looking for the short-term wins. And I always say with property, like really, if you take a longer-term approach, you are going to win. And that's that whole today's the best day to invest. Because if you are taking a long enough approach and you're not looking just for kind of that quick flip and the overnight millionaire success story, that's where you have like the real wins of investing.
That flip overnight millionaire story is done.
It doesn't exist.
It doesn't exist. So whoever is in the market looking for that, or agents that are advising that, I don't believe in that anymore.
No.
Just because there's too much stock, there's too much competition, and there's, you also need to remember some very important detail. The predominant investors in 2021 to 2023 were Russian and ex-Soviet states who invested in off-plan, majority. Now they're trying to exit. And they cannot because of a few reasons. They cannot move their funds. And they're not getting the returns that they've been promised.
Looking for.
And this is where we're seeing in the off-plan market a lot of units that are selling below OP. We're seeing a lot of distressed sales because of that one very big particular factor, detail, whatever you want to call it, that is impacting the market here today, specifically the off-plan market.
And because when people have got so much choice and they can buy straight from the developer with a payment plan with everything else, why would they buy another unit? Amazing. I also wanted to kind of touch on the prop tech world, because I know you have a huge kind of knowledge in that space. And so my background, I was actually in IT before property. So selfishly, I just kind of want to pick your brains on that of prop tech. Firstly, for everyone that doesn't kind of know, what is prop tech?
Real estate technology.
Yeah, it's as simple as that. It is. But in terms of like the trends of what's coming up and how it's going to shape the market, where are the areas that you think will be thriving in the next 12 months?
12 months, okay. CRMs. So there's a lot of buzz in the CRM world here, particularly. However, my advice to all of them, I get on a weekly basis multiple prop techs in and out of my office, startups, ideas. What I always say to them is, you need to innovate. You need to reinvent the CRM wheel. I actually put a post out over the weekend. Don't perfect the square. The square needs to exit.
Just rip it up, start again.
Exactly. And the perfect example that I gave was Ryan Serhant's
saw that post.
New CRM that's coming into the market called Simple. It hasn't been launched yet. He just got around $45 million of funding. From a VC company in the US. And that's where the market needs to go for CRM.
Yeah, I agree.
Let's see who does it, how they do it. It's in 12 months. I do think quite a few will come up, but like all prop techs here, you have a dozen come up and maybe one
makes it.
One is successful or kind of makes it through. MLS has been a big talk So the multiple listing service. We had Arab MLS come into the market by an American Egyptian who owns the rights to CoreLogic, which is the largest data company in the world. He owns the rights to the Middle East, as well as he owns the rights to one of the largest MLS platforms in North America. So he kicked off in Dubai, UAE, Egypt, Saudi, various different countries in the Middle East. I do think that can make a significant impact in the market here. However, it would need backing by the government and an exclusive real estate market. So if the market does not become exclusive, meaning one listing to one agent, then it won't work. Which is unfortunate because it will change the market for the better.
For the better. As a consumer of the market, came over, was looking for somewhere to live, and I found like it was just absolute chaos. There was like multiple agents. I booked like 3 viewings for the same property without me even knowing it, with 3 different agents, and I'm wasting everyone's time and my time. And I was like, this is wild that this is like possible and that this is happening. And I think, a change would make the world of difference to the market. I think people would be able to take it a lot more professionally. They'd put more money into marketing. And surely it'd be easier for the client as well, who's selling the property or who's renting the property, having one person of contact rather than this chaos.
Yes.
That's like spinning around.
Yes. There's so many pluses. And I come from the US where MLS has been around for over 100 years. It started as a book that agents would take around from office to office. So, and by the way, it's not mandated in the US.
It's not?
No, it's not mandated by the government. And it's actually owned by the National Association of Realtors, which is a private entity. So there's no reason why the same cannot be replicated here. Of course, it takes time. And it is also a mindset. But with an exclusive listing, the best interests of the seller and landlord are at hand by the agent. The agent is doing everything they can to market that property, including spending their own money on marketing that property. And it's just a win-win for both sides, as well as for the clients. The clients see one property with one agent. Agents go into the MLS system, which is for B2B, so it's for agent to agent, and they're able to see all the information, see the history. This will significantly change the market here, but
it'll be interesting to see if that comes.
There's other MLS systems that are trying to come into the market as well. So I see in the next 12 months, we'll see that word pop up more.
And it is a competitive industry and market. There's so many different agencies, so many different brokerages, and I think having that exclusivity would protect a lot of people.
Let's say
a lot of the audience, they are looking to invest. They're looking to make sure they are making safe investments, secure investments. What's the one piece of advice that you would give them, or what pitfalls do you see most people run into when they're looking to get into Dubai market?
So for international investors, and actually this is why I started Real Trust, is to make sure that your funds are secured when you're sending them here to purchase property. So Real Trust is a digital escrow platform that I created from scratch. It's a prop tech. And it secures the investors' funds coming into the UAE to purchase property. It's done legally through an FCA regulated Barclays account in the UK. Funds are transferred, they're held in escrow. There's an escrow agreement between all parties, which is part of the Form F addendum, which is the MOU here that we use, the government MOU for Dubai. In Abu Dhabi, we do our own version of MOU from scratch, and in RAC, same. So make sure that the funds are protected and it's clearly outlined in the terms and conditions and the escrow agreement how the funds get dispersed when you buy a property. That's number one important thing, because before I started Real Trust, and this concept has been in my head for over a decade, and I've been working for the last 3 years on this. The way funds were transferred here to the UAE to buy property were always in a very non-transparent way. It was either through a fund or friend of a bank, or to real estate brokerage accounts directly, which now cannot happen anymore because of the UAE Central Bank cannot accept third-party funds. So the brokerages are getting penalized and their bank accounts are getting frozen. So that's why the whole concept of Real Trust came up in that digital escrow. So that's always my first advice to foreign investors, is just understand the laws and regulations of the market and how your funds are protected when they're sending in. Then the other thing is find a really good real estate advisor, a real estate agent to help you. Because obviously you can do all the research as much as you want on your own and look at the data that's out there readily available, but you really need an agent who's on the ground and understands what is happening in the area that you are looking in. I love when I speak to real estate agents, for example, in a particular area, and they're like, oh yeah, well, 6 months ago, this unit sold for this, and oh yeah, they're thinking about selling, but they're not quite sure. And we had this unit over here, but because like they know the ins and outs of that community, and that's the type of real estate agent that you need to be looking for as a foreign investor.
You do. You need someone on your team who's on the ground, who knows like you said, like knows the floor plans, knows which way you'll be facing, where the views are, what's coming up in the area, because if you have a view one day in Dubai, you may not the next day.
Exactly.
And having like a real pulse of what's going on.
Exactly. Knows the good, the bad, and the ugly.
Yeah, no, exactly. And I think that point on the security and safety around your investing is so key, just for anyone to give them that comfort anyway. Like you work hard for your money, you want to make it work for yourself, and just doing it in a secure way, understanding all the red tape around it and making sure that you're making sensible decisions.
Exactly.
Amazing.
Backed by data.
Exactly. Exactly. We come full circle. Honestly, thank you so much for your time. I really, really appreciate you being here, everything that you've done to actually make it a lot easier and a lot more transparent for everyone to invest in the Dubai real estate market. And I'm very excited to see what comes next. What's the best place for people to reach you on, reach out on, and for anything else they...
My website, realtrustuae.com.
Yeah.
On Instagram, Lynnette.Dubai. On LinkedIn, Lynnette Sacchetto.
Perfect. Go and check it all out. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for having me. It was a pleasure.
Thank you. Fantastic.
Good.
Brilliant. That was such an interesting conversation.